Digital Foundry is proudly sponsored by Omen's new wireless range of mice, keyboards, and headsets.
We're back for another DF Direct. I'm John Linneman, and I'm joined by Alex Battaglia in what has become a tradition at this point to discuss the latest showcase from one of the major console manufacturers. So, Alex, there's a lot to talk about, isn't there?
Yeah, we got the price, we got some more games, we got a lot.
We also got some interesting news, which we'll have to discuss at the end regarding, well,
yeah,
you'll see. But I say we pop on over to our PCs and watch the conference together, because that's what we're going to do, just as we did with other recent events. We're going to play through the entire showcase video and sit here and discuss it for you in real time.
Yep.
Or at least real time for us. You'll be watching this in post, but let's get started. So this is a show with potentially mature content, so it says.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this was showcased, I guess, on September 16th, 2020 in the late evening here in Europe. And yeah, so we're kicking off here with this nice montage showcasing some of the games that they've sort of demonstrated in previous showcases, which is cool.
Yeah, basically all the stuff we've seen before, just kind of super edited, which is always nice to get the hype rolling.
So it really is interesting to see, like, we're reaching the point where we're getting close to launch, and there's always this whole thing about like how you want to build up hype, and Sony and Microsoft have really gone about this differently. And it is, you know, I can't really say which approach is better, but Sony's taking this very mysterious approach, if you will, like more so than I think they've ever taken, where it's just like you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know when things will happen. They just show up, and in a very mysterious way they reveal games and content. So I do think that kind of builds hype, and that's interesting that they're so upfront about this.
Yeah, that's also very interesting because we got that during a lot of the Xbox Series X stuff during their showcases, to the point where we've not actually seen, well, we have, but the audience has not seen many things running on Xbox Series X, which is quite interesting. And this game being a PS5 exclusive, I think that's the first time we've seen that text ever for a game of theirs.
Yeah, it is weird though. Like, I will say, like, after seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake, despite its flaws, this feels decidedly less visually ambitious in a lot of ways. Like, if that scene in the crowd was actually real time, then that was relatively impressive.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's something about the materials and like the skin shading and everything that looks a little bit weird to me.
People are going to get on my case about it because people didn't like what I said about Halo Infinite, but this is using that same, you know...
It's that lighting, isn't it?
It's the lighting. It's all the lighting, and this is using that open world, real-time lighting that they have in this engine. And it's not very next-gen in that aspect.
That's true. Because you're right. I mean, the rest of the stuff, the detail level, looks pretty good. I mean, it's a nice-looking world. It's just, you're right, the lighting is pretty flat. I mean, it looks better than... what we saw of Halo Infinite, but still, you know, like, that actually looks very Witcher to me.
My main takeaway from this trailer is how Witcher 3 it looked at the end of it.
Here's the thing, though, is apparently this is being developed by some of the 14 guys, I guess. That's just
okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I've heard from people that have played it that the storytelling in that game was actually phenomenal and one of the most interesting stories in Final Fantasy history. So the fact that this could be a single-player game that sort of carries on that is an interesting idea. And I also know that I guess one of the lead guys on this is much more of a fan of Western-style RPGs. So I kind of this could be neat because, like, we're gonna have a Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, which will be that traditional. Oh, I wouldn't say traditional, but the more Japanese style. Whereas Final Fantasy XVI seems like the next Final Fantasy XII, if you will, where it's a more Western RPG focused, more medieval fantasy based kind of design.
Yeah.
You know, it could actually work, and the pedigree is there, and the concept could be interesting. I mean, it looks good. Not like stunning.
It looks suitably mature too, which is interesting. Like there was just like someone I think got decapitated, which I can't remember the last time that's happened in a Final Fantasy game.
It's
that's intense.
It's very different, and you know what? If they can deliver some sort of like weird fusion of JRPG with something like Witcher 3 style, you know, design, and that could be really cool because the dialogue apparently is what makes, and like just the storytelling in Final Fantasy XIV is supposedly quite good. I don't have time to find out because those games are a huge time sink.
Who's got time for a MMO these days?
Exactly. Well, some people.
One thing that I think to point out in this trailer that's interesting is we'll see big contrasts in other trailers after this one. Is John and I really like per object motion blur, but in this trailer they are using it, but they have a very high shutter speed, so it's not very long. You don't actually see it too often unless there's great exaggerated movement. And games like Demon's Souls or Spider-Man Miles Morales, they have like a very long shutter speed, and it makes it look so much better. Both of those games
are just remarkable, and man, well, I mean, obviously we'll get to see some of that coming up. But this is interesting then, because so that first bit there, they were very clear. This is PC emulating what they expect PS5 will look like. But after this cool little interlude, it will then jump into the text suggesting that the rest of the video is captured from PlayStation 5 development kits.
Yeah, which would be, I would say, unsurprising because these are mostly the first-party developers we're going to be seeing for at least 2 games.
Yeah, here we go. We expected to see this. This is an interesting one because obviously they had done a lot of great work on PlayStation 4 already. Clearly, I mean, this is just a continuation of that, and we know that this is also coming to PS4.
Which is interesting. So I guess alongside the better character models, greater crowd densities, I'd imagine we'll also see on PS5. They've also announced that the game is using ray traced reflections at this point, and I'm pretty sure I also read maybe ray traced shadows, unless I'm mistaken.
So there's both of those, but they also have announced, I believe, that there's going to be a 60 frames per second performance mode, which is really interesting, which I assume would get rid of the ray tracing.
Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine so
probably.
Too. It's expensive.
So here, I guess, I think that these are probably ray traced reflections here.
Yeah, for sure. You can see it.
When the camera moves off the side there, you're not seeing any of the SSR artifacts or anything like that. It looks very stable. Yeah. And it makes sense to showcase this. This is actually a tough situation for SSR because you have 2 characters swinging their arms, walking in front of the reflections. That usually triggers.
There's a character or 2 here missing a reflection, which is weird. But I'm just assuming that's just.
Well, I mean, they could be left out of the BVH.
Yeah, right? I guess so.
Like we've seen that kind of stuff before, where it's just some objects are excluded.
The smoke there is too. So one thing we've seen in games is that transparency effects are not always ray traced in reflections because it's really, really, really expensive. So
super expensive.
Like Control doesn't do it on PC. There's probably other games too that I can't just think of off the top of my head, but really expensive. So I wouldn't expect it always for many next-gen games with ray tracing.
And I think that's okay. I mean, it's a nice to have, but I think that's what we're going to have to see developers make smart choices in terms of how ray tracing is used. And it should still be very effective, I think.
Yeah, one thing in this trailer that is hard to see, even though they've announced it, is ray trace shadows. Usually the way I would look for them in a game trailer is by kind of looking for like noise or over time dithering that you might see and things like that. But it's really hard to see in this trailer any sort of evidence of that without like extremely really close inspection, which I have yet to do yet.
I will say though, once again, I mean, we were just talking about shutter speed, and that is something that this game just absolutely nails. It nailed it on PlayStation 4, and it's absolutely perfect here as well. It's just the lower shutter speed really helps.
The animation quality gets increased so much when you do that in a game, especially one that'll be targeting 30 here. And I really can't wait to see that motion blur at 60 hertz as well too. That should be really cool.
I know, and Insomniac's motion blur in general is some of the best on the market, I think, right now. It's relatively clear of visible artifacts compared to some. The shutter speed settings are perfect. Like, it just accentuates the animation in a way that's really, really impressive.
As much as you can carry.
Also, the particle effects are pretty darn good in this trailer. Like all the GPU particles you see there flying off from that thing,
beautiful,
exploding. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm not sure what the story is behind this game other than the little blurb they gave us at the begining. Like, are these some sort of like eco-terrorists? I'm not sure what this is.
I assume this takes place after the first game because the original ended with Miles sort of I guess discovering his abilities.
Oh, that's how it ends. So I didn't beat the game.
So that's part of it. Yeah, it's been a while since I finished it, but I remember after the whole Doc Ock showdown on the building and everything, like I believe they cut to Miles at some point. And you're kind of like, oh.
It would be curious since we're now dealing with
That's cool right there.
I like the physics stuff going on when you push people over the edge. That's what I kind of want to talk about is now that we're going to be seeing games that are also releasing on PS4 and PS5, and one of the big differences here are going to be like the crowds and the ray tracing and stuff like that and the performance mode. But I'm also curious which and how many games would spend the time to do more CPU related stuff. The crowds are like that here, but like, what about physics interactions? Would a PS5 version?
I think we'll have to wait to see more of that in time. We'll see how that goes. But I would also like to see this. In this game, though, I mean, this stuff's pretty cool, but they were able to do some amazing stuff on PS4 as well. But see, that's the thing, is that this is just... Insomniac is so good at these sort of just ridiculously detailed animations and like blending everything together in a way. Like it's just this mix of the post-processing, the actual like physics and deformations, I guess, pre-calculated cinematics sort of physics, if you will. I forget what they call
Alembic.
that, but yeah, exactly. That stuff is excellent. This is kind of their showcase.
I guess Ratchet and Clank is going to be the larger showcase for streaming technology.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess the way they would do it in this game is they're not going to make you like fly through the city faster or something like that on PS5. That'd be absurd.
Well, you can... I assume what this means on PS5, I would hope, is that they just can push the logs out a lot. Yeah. Because, if you look closely at Spider-Man on PS5 or PS4, they do a great job of hiding it. But if you look carefully, you can absolutely see the limitations when you're swinging through the city.
Yeah.
So if they can make crowds and objects visible at a great distance, like if you're swinging around from the tops of a building and actually see stuff happening down on the streets that is accurate to what will be down there if you jump down there, that could be neat.
I'm curious also what type of ray trace shadows they use. There's the type that you saw like in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, where it's basically used for all types of shadows, and it can have like really soft ones. Then there's the other type that was used in Control, which adds a lot of extra sharper, tighter shadows into the environment, because that's really hard to do with normal shadow mapping usually. So I'm curious what they did, because the way Control did it was pretty cheap, I would say, and still looked really great. And then you have something like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which was really expensive and sometimes questionably worth it for the visual return in certain scenes. So I'd imagine if this is a console game like it is, they're going to go for something that is bang for the buck, looks good, and is cheaper to use.
Exactly. Gosh, though, I'm still amazed at the way they're able to seemingly effortlessly throw around so much stuff.
Yeah, it's good.
So detailed, so well animated, without any hitches, skips, or anything like that. It's so perfect.
Something about
their engine is very impressive.
Something about those bridge scenes, because that's the way Marvel's Avengers also starts off, with a very similar, gravity-defying bridge explosion. Something about that stuff.
I think this looks a little better than that. Even though Avengers looks very nice, this looks better to my eyes.
It does for me too.
I genuinely don't care about any of this stuff. I've never read one of these books or watched one of these films. Well, I saw one once. I was brought to like part 2 of one of the films, and I fell asleep in the theater because I just didn't care. But I will say that this does at least look like visually impressive.
SSR on the water, interestingly, which is this one first thing that kind of stood out to me. I do like the semi-volumetric clouds in the background, and I think this is UE4.
That would probably make sense.
I think that was confirmed a while back, as it was leaked as a game when there was that little tiny video snippet that was arrived on Twitter. I think it also has a little bit of a UE4 look in terms of the post-processing and motion blur and all that stuff. It's a good-looking game from what I can see here.
It does look like Unreal Engine 4. You can see a lot of techniques that are very familiar with Unreal Engine in a good way. Like, I love the way this looks.
Yeah, it's really well done. And I think the animation, like there, when that little thing transforms, that looked really great.
That looks great right there. Yeah, there's a lot of nice visual stuff going on in this game for sure.
It should be interesting, because it seems that they're hinting at an open world on top of the castle itself, and maybe different open world locations, or maybe mission locations, kind of like The Witcher 3 has occasionally.
That that right there, that like sort of stop motion looking bridge was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
When
look.
I first watched it, I thought it was a low frame rate. I wasn't sure if it was.
No.
Yeah.
That makes me think of like Return to Oz and the like.
Yeah, that's actually a great point.
I love that kind of stuff. Okay. So yeah, they're showing a lot of stuff. There's really no idea what this is about.
But what form will it take? The journey ahead.
Oh, deep down. Oh, wait, no.
Yeah, when I thought about that immediately, there's still not a lot of games with fluid sims out there.
No. I would love to see more of that.
It's something that next gen I hopefully does. The Wukong Black Myth Wukong game does it, which is really cool. I guess we'll start seeing more of that kind of stuff as the gen goes on. Everything ends with a tagline: "Live the unwritten, be yourself."
If this console reveal were a film series, it would be a Marvel cinematic universe. Oh, dude, they're talking about Heretic and...
No. Raven sadly hasn't been making those kind of games since 2006-ish, almost, I feel like.
Pour one out for Raven.
Pour one out for Raven.
I mean, I'm sure they're doing financially well at this point. I mean, you're attached to a rather significant series like Call of Duty, but, you know... A man can dream.
Tom and I recently looked at the PC Alpha beta version of this running on the multiplayer component, and this is not, to our knowledge, using the newest Infinity Ward engine. And not to be negative about the game at all, but I think we're going to look back at this version of a Call of Duty game and then see one that comes out a year or two later and be like, oh, this is like the ghosts of this generation of consoles. It's cross-gen.
So you say that, but I think this still looks really good here in a way that when Ghosts launched, it did not. Ghosts, when that launched, I mean, that also launched alongside Battlefield 4. Say what you will about the campaign in Battlefield 4. It was an absolutely stunning looking game on PC and consoles alike. This looks really good. Not like cutting edge per se. Oh, it does have that though. But you know, like Ghosts, yeah, it was not, it didn't impress.
So one thing I noticed too is they also released an RTX trailer after this came out, and they've already mentioned that next gen will be using ray tracing in some way. And there's been conflicting reports on exactly how and what and why, and we've been kind of speculating about it. But in that RTX trailer, there was pretty obvious usage, I think, of ray trace shadows, much like Infinity Ward's game that came out last year. So if they use those for things like muzzle flash shadows, it's actually really cool.
Wait, before it's gone, the helicopter blade there, I like the way they arted that up with the light shining
that
on
does
there.
look,
not the helicopter blade, the propeller from the airplane.
That does look good. A game that does that is also Flight Simulator. Has that's right. The propeller, like, it's so motion blurred and transparent that it even has shadows cast onto it, which is really cool looking. Ooh.
But yes.
Call of Duty. I mean, one thing that I really do like that Call of Duty has been doing ever since partially in Advanced Warfare, that was very much so Sniper Elite.
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh,
dude! See, at this moment, like the Sniper Elite guys just slam their fists.
Like,
no, that's our mechanic.
Know, right?
What are you doing?
It's kind of funny.
And then they're probably in the meeting room, like, but wait, they haven't confirmed that there's any net shots in
there. There's no X-ray to kind of Mortal Kombat.
There's no X-ray of the nether regions being exploded.
It would be very much so this game's tone, though. In some ways, it's so serious, but also at the same time, you can't take it too seriously because
and this next scene is kind of a showcase of why, but in an awesome way.
It reminds me a lot of
like here. I'm thinking, this looks visually nice. It's still very scripted, as is Call of Duty tradition. But you know, I can appreciate a good set piece. Mm-hmm. But then I saw this, and I was like, this is still a set piece. But you know what? I don't care. This looks awesome. I love this idea.
This is straight off a 90s movie. Like, don't worry, I've got an RC car with explosives tracked to it. Which I think we also...
I'm going to hack the enemy's plane by driving the RC car. No, I don't know. But see, the way that happened right there, like, man, like... You have to. I'm very curious to see these scenes are fun to break apart to understand how they're scripted together and how they work, right? Like, I like to make errors in scripted sequences, like intentionally fail just to see the fail state and the way they handle that. Obviously you're not driving here, so that will play out, but see, this looks the rendering on display is very impressive, and this looks very expensive.
Yeah, I guess it looks very expensive. That's a really good way to put it. I also like the usage of volumetric lighting, which I've talked about before in different videos on this, but they're using that quite a bit. More so than previous Call of Duty games, I would almost argue.
This could be... I have enjoyed the storytelling in the Black Ops games somewhat. It's one of the few Call of Duty games that has been reasonably compelling in that regard, so I am moderately curious to see what they do with this.
In terms of gameplay, I think the one that interested me the most was Infinite Warfare, because it was just it was different.
That was really solid. It was different
enough, and I guess I like space, so that's just me.
I also love space. It is, although I'm hesitant to actually visit space. Not that I would have the chance, but what is this nominal fee required to access in Germany and Japan?
I actually am not sure what that's about, because I don't actually access the PlayStation Network here on my PS4 Pro that often to know about that. I don't really do it other than to download games for reviews.
How often do you dust your PlayStation 4
If
Pro?
I took a photo of it right now, you'd be pretty embarrassed, John. But the Xbox is also that way too. To be fair, obviously.
Exactly. That's the thing to make clear here is we're commenting on Alex's favoring of the personal computer as a platform as opposed to consoles.
That's just me. You know how it is. But
I dust mine every weekend, however, because I like to keep them squeaky clean.
A nominal fee. I'm pretty sure some of these games are getting the next gen hike for price. I don't know how many of them necessarily. But big difference.
I'm okay. So I thought about this. I'm happy to pay more if it means, and this is where I'm worried actually, if it means that the games are complete and not packed with other weird DLC schemes and other things like that. But I fear that they still will be. So I don't know. Development is really expensive these days. It's difficult to make these games. Companies are pouring a lot of money into it. I am not even a little surprised that there is some sort of price hike happening. It almost needs to happen.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's happening. I just wish they would do regional pricing a bit better, because the U.S. price is like adjusted pre-tax and things like that, but their post-VAT tax in Europe, and I also think in Australia, is not right. Both for the games and maybe also for at least the PlayStation console. I think Xbox did a rather reasonable pricing scheme for the UK and Europe that I know of, but we'll see.
But we're talking about that instead of what we're seeing here with Resident Evil Village, which looks really nice to me, and that is bizarre. These little art interludes here, I'm not sure what that's about.
Yeah, it is pretty weird. It's also very different because we did hear at one point that this game was rebranded, I think, as being Resident Evil. Maybe that is slight leftover from the pre-rebranding.
I think it was alwaes intended to be Resident Evil, but I think it was possibly more of a side story, and now it's basically... I mean, they highlight the VILL in a way that it's clearly meant to be 8, even if they won't say it. But
one of the things about the post-processing in this trailer is it's really heavy, and it's hard to see much out of the peripheral part of the view, and there's really blooming. It reminds me a bit of Kane and Lynch 2, as a weird way to say which also was very bloomy, very hard to see post-processing. But in this case, you're a first-person character and not some sort of handy-cam footage like they tried to do in that game.
Yeah, very curious how this will play out. I'm sure this will be solid.
Yeah, I'd imagine too, like Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2, it's probably going to target 60 FPS and all that.
Yeah, that's my guess as well. This presentation was shared at 30 frames per second, but several of these games shown, and actually, I guess what you might be seeing right now is the full frame rate footage, because we will be editing in the higher quality trailers. We're just watching the original stream file instead.
Yeah, and this is also
and 60, I think this is a game that is also supposedly targeting 60. Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was delayed, and I can't blame them. It's been a difficult year.
Been crazy.
But I am very much into the look of this game.
Yeah.
The style is really interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of no one lives forever, and also I don't know, Team Fortress 2. It's a very interesting mix.
But like, there's more realism to it. Like it's like hyper realism, like some of the environments and such. But it has but yet it's still very much fantastical, animated.
Yeah.
But the animation is really good on the first person animations are excellent.
Should be interesting to see. So I know for first person gameplay trailers, they tend to do like really, I wouldn't say scripted, but really great playthroughs to get like all the stuff lined up. I'm curious how the animation actually looks when just a normal person's playing it. But they're like
that's the big question.
Bespoke animations, like when you crack that guy's neck, it looked pretty awesome actually.
I'm really happy to see this, though. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Arcane Lyon, and I guess actually Arcane in general. Prey was one of the best games of the generation, I think. And I love Dishonored. Dishonored 2 specifically.
And I guess this is using their, what is it now called? The Void engine?
The Void engine, which is some sort of id Tech fork, I believe, that they've sort of crafted into their own thing. I think, unless it's, I'm not sure what would have changed, but it definitely still looks very much like that.
Yeah, it definitely does, excluding they finally added in per object blur into their branch of the engine, which was not in Dishonored 2. It was sorely missing.
Looks really good here,
Good here.
I'm glad that they've added it in.
Yeah. It's also interesting to see them taking it's got aspects of immersive simness in it, I would say, in terms of, I'm imagining each of these world scenarios that you go into are going to have larger, more open, free-form level design, but it's also doesn't seem to be the Dishonored formula. It's still pretty different. I actually like that quite a bit.
Yeah, clearly.
But
so this should be interesting for sure. And I think at the end here, don't they say that it's a PS5 console?
Yeah,
exclusive?
that was new. I think everyone assumed before that would also come to Series X. I think it's on PC though. I don't know if it is.
I would hopefully.
I don't know from the top of my head at this moment. Pretty sure though that it is that way, but no Series X version, at least from what the end of this trailer shows off.
I mean, this gets into this whole thing about which platforms games should target. Something, we'll talk about that later, I think. I'm okay with fewer platforms for games in the sense that, every platform adds extra stress and work to the development process, and that it can impact decisions and the way things play out. So, PS5 and PC only seems like an okay combo.
Yeah, it does.
But
it's I guess the one thing is I would hope with this generation of consoles that they are both so similar on a technological standpoint that the porting process between one and the other over time, I wouldn't expect for launch necessarily.
Well, yeah,
I
think
easy.
with Series X for sure, but you have to wonder about Series S, how easily that'll actually work out. Like, what we've heard is positive, but hopefully the process is smooth. I mean, we'll see. We honestly don't know right now.
Downscaling games. Some games I think it maybe will be easier, and some others. Oh, look at this! This is the thing that annoys the heck out of me.
I love this. They're kicking off with ray trace reflections because they know that the screen space reflections in the RE engine and in this game were not good.
Terrible.
I never liked the way they looked. They were awful. Yeah. So it's really funny to me that they're kicking off this trailer by saying, "Hey guys, look, we fixed it."
And the RE engine games are one of the few games I know. The only other one is like Horizon Zero Dawn on PC, where when you increase the resolution, you just get less reflections with SSR. It's like what were they thinking? I don't even know. But this is a nice. So no particles once again.
Look how often they keep showing the reflections. I love it. Like it's like, hey, check it out, reflections.
They did really nicely, and I do applaud them for this. Even though I'm about to kind of tear into them after this is over. They did release a really cool 3-minute long video describing the technology difference between this version of the game, what type of ray tracing it is. It's ray traced reflections and some sort of form of ray traced diffuse indirect lighting as well too.
And at 60 frames per second.
60 frames per second, yeah.
Very cool,
there's
actually.
a up to 4K 30 mode with RT on, a 1080p 60 mode with RT on, and then I think they also announced a possible 120 hertz mode. and I don't know what the resolution figures
Without
RT, and probably,
So that's really fascinating, actually, and that's kind of what I would have expected. I think ray tracing at 60 frames per second is gonna always, usually require. I think they can make up for it by outputting at 4K and using some sort of like temporal upscale features and things like that to improve image quality, but
I'm a little surprised that they said 1080p and not some sort of upscaled resolution, because this engine does
we'll
that.
see how it goes.
This engine does this pretty all right.
Now, I think you don't have time to go into the full rant now, but I think you're disappointed to learn that is not coming to PC for some reason, which is baffling.
It's also launching later on Xbox Series X too. It's not launching with the PlayStation version. So you don't get RT and stuff like that on the Xbox Series X as well too, which is confusing to me. I don't know why. I'll talk about it later.
I'm happy to see more of this game. I played this at E3 in 2019 and was very, very impressed with this is a game that really tries to showcase a lot of those interactions that we've lamented as being absent from many games, where like every material has its own sort of properties, like wood burns and metal. Wood will snap, but if you apply that same force to metal, it'll bend, and everything has its own sort of properties in that sense. On top of managing a large fleet of Mudokons around the stages. It feels really cool and impressive, and it's a beautiful game as well. I had wondered, like, how are they going to do this on
that's
last
what I was just
generation
about to
consoles
say.
or current generation at the time? And the answer is perhaps, I guess. I mean, they haven't. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is possible on PS4. It seems difficult.
This transition to the current generation of consoles before the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X come out, you had really big upticks in GPU and memory, but the CPU was a little bit stagnant in some ways, and you saw like a change in development along.
A little bit.
I don't want to be so mean, but it wasn't that great. And then you saw a change in development where there's less, CPU simulation in games. We have the differences between something like, I don't know, Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 5 in some aspects that we've talked about before on the channel. But this game kind of reminds me of something LucasArts would almost do back in the day.
Also, more surprisingly, this game uses Unity.
Yeah.
Which is, like, we know that Unity can be used in amazing ways. We've seen it before, and this seems to be another example of the developers really understanding and utilizing its tool to create something quite beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I played it on PC at 60 frames per second, and it was gorgeous.
Can't wait to see that. Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. I'm happy that that's coming along. I'm really, really excited to see sort of that return of Oddworld with its very unique style gameplay.
And are the
rather than just
cutscenes real time? Do you know?
I don't know.
Actually, I mean, there was some aliasing in the trailer I noticed in it, but that can also happen in a pre-recorded thing.
I think they are.
That'd be good,
but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, now this is funny because I saw. I was like, wait a minute, what is this?
It took me a while too.
And it's like it's Five Nights at Freddy's, which my son is very much into right now. All of a sudden, he enjoys this feeling of being scared, and then like, oh man, that was scary, and then he giggles maniacally at it.
This is the exact opposite of the type of game that I would be super interested in, but it's interesting nonetheless.
But this seems to be like a proper game. Like, not that Five Nights at Freddy's not. That's basically you're monitoring a security system and dealing with things as they come along. It's not a bad concept, but this looks much, much, much more robust. So
technically,
I'm very curious to see what they do.
There was SSR I saw earlier and cube map reflections, so that's. That.
Alex, this is not one of those games.
Hey, gotta comment on
it.
Man,
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Better looking reflections than RE Engine on last gen.
I'm just waiting for the real linchpin of this presentation. The game that, for me at least, impressed me the most. The one that goes beyond every other game in this presentation.
You talking about Bug Snacks, John?
No, not Bug Snacks.
No,
although
that is also good too. No, but
this is looking. Yeah, this for me is the most. Maybe it's. I want to say this is the most visually striking and visually appealing game that's shown, especially running at 60 frames per second. Like, I really love the sheer density of detail on display. Like, there is a lot of geometry in these scenes.
Should be interesting.
Beautiful reflections there too.
I think though when they moved the camera, I think they are SSR, because I think for them they haven't really fully announced what their ray tracing is. I think it may be shadows.
My guess is that there's going to be the performance mode without ray tracing, and this is 60 FPS, so this is probably the performance mode. And then, maybe a 30 FPS RT mode. I mean, that's similar to what they did with Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, it is very similar.
On PlayStation 4. But man, I just love, like, the density of this world is fantastic. Yeah. Like, the artfulness of all these meshes that they've crafted, it's really, really nice.
I'm happy also, too, that it is very similar visually, I would say, in a lot of ways to the original game, but they've made it their own in its own way, too. It's
it has its own look, absolutely.
I like that transition, too.
Nice particles there. Great motion blur, too.
Motion blur is excellent.
Their lighting here I really love it. Like, the way, like, you have these little torches there, like, highlighting the detail on the wall, the volumetric lighting pouring down from above, like, the bright highlights where the sun is hitting things.
There was an indirect shadow from that character that moved forward there through the indirect lighting. I mean, they could be using something like, because what is it? Their engine also has capsule shadows.
Shadow of the Colossus, they had really nice capsule shadows in Shadow of the Colossus.
They could be using that
for
too.
Indirect shadowing.
I also like that the Souls games always have this inner light from your character, but it's just like a point light right inside them, and it kind of looks awkward.
Look at that.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
The shadow here is so
Take that,
good.
Dark Souls 2.
There's so much. Exactly.
Yeah,
good
but
Lord.
they here their inner light also casts shadows from your character, and it's like placed a little bit before them, and I like that quite a bit more than the way the normal Souls games do it.
It looks really
it looks
good.
a lot better.
It's so good looking. This is obviously I'm excited because I love these games. And I haven't played Demon's Souls in a very long time.
Please.
It's actually the one I've spent the least amount of time with as well. I haven't finished Demon's Souls on PS3, and I haven't finished Dark Souls 2. I've finished all the rest.
Yeah, I haven't.
So I'm kind of excited to get back into this and really, look at this.
I like that a lot.
I can't. I'm just slobbering all over this because I just there's so much intricacy in the detail.
The perfect game to go crazy with geo detail, because the rooms are going to be small, and just like, okay, who cares? Just throw as much in there as you can. And
just the animation quality of everything and the motion blur and everything here is just phenomenal.
I also think a difference here too is there's blood streaking going on I forget the name of this demon form. But that's new. The Soul games tend to shy away from applying decals to character models.
You're right. And then they show a bunch of other sequences here to give us a
boom.
Oh my gosh.
Very cool.
Yeah, I really love the look here.
It's hard to fault anything in this trailer on a technical level, and you shouldn't, because it just looks amazing.
Blue Point, really, really top-notch studio. These guys, they know what they're doing.
I mean, so
look at that.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Like in like in an original Souls game, that would just be like some sort of like really awkward texture or basic geometry.
I can't believe that this is a launch game.
Yeah,
dude. This is a really good launch game to have. Like, this is the one of all the systems and all the games that have announced. This is the one I really care about. I want to play this very much.
I think that's the most compelling, and also, I think it's visually the most. I don't know how to say it. You described it earlier, kind of as like really like the entire package. Everything's like they're just doing everything really well. That appeals to me.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a level of polish there that appeals to me.
See what's man, I can't believe they ran this ad. So we get this one of
so disappointing.
No, okay, I can't knock. Fortnite's, that's a good thing to have at launch. A lot of people playing this game, and maybe they'll have the ray tracing features.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, just came out on PC, so it's quite a bit. They use like that RTX GI stuff. I think they also maybe use shadows and reflections. I have yet to even load it up myself. But I would assume, 4K 60, or at least, dynamic 4K 60 temporal upscale, which this engine does really well.
Yeah. So this is puzzling. The PlayStation Plus collection.
I don't know what this is.
Which seems to be some sort of subscription service for PlayStation 4 games.
Huh.
So this is backwards compatible titles. Now, I assume, and I'm hoping that this service is simply a case of, well, you can subscribe to enjoy PlayStation 4 games, but you can still play whatever PlayStation 4 games you opt to via disc or digital download, and that we're not seeing some sort of weird subscription-based limitation of what you can play.
That's a good point.
I can't. They wouldn't do that.
I
right?
hope not.
That would be a disaster.
I guess that.
I really hope this.
I guess this is one area where the difference between manufacturers is more clear. Where Xbox or Microsoft in this case is really focused on the backwards compatibility experience and talking about it quite a bit, and there's less information out there on the PlayStation.
Well, they haven't really shown many actual new games already on the console, so I mean it's a great feature. But
I'm also this is our pet peeve too. I think too is showing off stuff that's next gen only. That's what we really want, and it's nice to have your old backwards compatibility catalog, but we just kind of want to see the new stuff too.
Well, we'll see how this goes. Yeah. I mean, I'm very curious about their backwards compatibility strategy overall, and I want to see how it plays out. We'll see. I mean, it's cool they showed Bloodborne there. Right? Maybe Bloodborne will actually
not be weird.
I don't want to get my hopes up on that anymore. I've been hoping for so long. We know Bloodborne can almost run at 60 frames per second ish on a PS4 Pro. We did a video on that thanks to Lance McDonald. So I mean, clearly changes could be made, but it did take him some effort to figure that out, of course. But I don't know. We'll see. Very curious about
one thing
this.
I've always been curious about is, at least on the Microsoft side, they have the ability to like alter VSync at a system level to a certain degree because, they allow like 120 hertz games and things like that.
That's
I've always been curious about something like that could be done for Bloodborne, because if it just had a properly enforced proper VSync, that would make the game a lot better.
Because that's precisely what we saw happen with Halo 3 and backwards compatibility. That game had frame pacing issues on 360, but on Xbox One, in backwards compatible mode, it is eliminated, despite the fact that it retains the 30 frames per second cap. So, it seems like it's something that would be feasible. So here's where they're going to finally announce the price. Everybody's waiting for this. Now we know it is very expensive in Europe. 499 euros versus $499.
That's a big difference.
In US dollars, that's nearly 600 US dollars.
I know, right?
Because I still keep a bank account in North America, I am acutely aware of
the euro.
The differences there.
I don't know why it's the regional pricing is so different. It's a big difference for the U.S. audience. This is also, I guess, with the
but
tax.
To be fair, like,
also
these prices are lower than rumors that we had heard leading up to this for both systems. So I'm curious, like, if they're taking a loss on these or if they just managed to get manufacturing costs down. Like, I'd love to know more about what's going on there. We probably won't know more, at least for some years. We'll see.
And we'll also, I guess, have to see the launch situation in terms of the availability of units. I know everyone's going crazy to get a pre-order for this thing, us included. So,
as an aside, you see they shine the blue light on the people filmed during this sequence, right? And I was just thinking about how amazing would it be for us if we were doing a multi-platform video on camera and we would switch between a green or blue light depending on whether we're talking about Xbox or PS5.
I would love to do that. A little post-processing.
So here we go. This is them teasing a new God of War.
Which, I mean,
for PS5.
It's 2021, right? Is that what it says? I think that's what they proposed launch date was, which would be, in lieu of the worldwide crisis that's going on right now, would be very impressive development time.
It would be.
For, I would call these games pretty ambitious on a visual technical level, and getting that out in, what is it, 3? How many years would that have been then? Till then, came out in 2018, right?
That would be 3 years by then. I think.
Pretty great turnaround. on a game. And God of War wasn't exactly a small game.
I can't help but think that'll slip. But
Yeah.
if they get that out in 2021, I mean, wow, impressive to say the least.
And also, I would really love to see what they're doing with the because like Kratos' model last gen is really good looking.
It's superb.
And I would really love to
Yeah.
see where they push it with next gen tech, because like there's tiny things on the last gen version where if they had just a bunch of GPU power, they would make it better. Like beer looks great, but what if it's like moving really well too? All these little things that you think like
exactly.
Kratos. Yeah.
But yeah, that is it, Alex. I walked away from this being mostly happy with what they've shown. There's some really beautiful looking games in this presentation. The Demon Souls demo in particular, that is not only, so that represents two things for me. Not only is it absolutely stunning to behold, it's just an absolutely beautiful game, but it also delivers what I had been wanting to see from a lot of these other games. And I guess Spider-Man did this too, where they just show a playable chunk of the game, basically. Like, yes, it's somewhat cinematic the way they do it, but it gives you a real idea of how it will look and play and feel. And this is exactly what I have been wanting since the beginning of the reveal of these consoles. And you know what? Hats off to Bluepoint, especially for delivering such an exceptional looking game and demo. I cannot wait to play that. But yeah.
I was just going to say, like, I'm also very happy that we saw, two really nice extended gameplay demos to a certain degree, even if they are a little bit more cinematic than usual. That's not easy to do before a console launch, and that's exactly what I want to see.
No.
And also, I'm very happy about the usage of ray tracing in these games. We know, in a number of these titles, Miles Morales using it for at least 2 effects. We're seeing it in DMC 5 as well. At launch, this is way better than I thought it would be a couple years ago, and this is exactly where the kind of technology needs to be right now. People adopting it, coming to terms with it, and then optimizing it even more, so it gets even better as the generation goes on. I guess the only things that I'm a little curious or skeptical about at the end of this is maybe a little bit of the pricing stuff about the game prices and the European prices, and also the kind of stuff we heard after the fact about PS4 versions for a couple of these games, like Horizon Zero Dawn.
That actually is concerning for me. I get it. I can understand, especially in the case of like Horizon, the sequel to Horizon, being on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, because they've probably been developing that for the last 3 years, since 2017, perhaps, and it would make sense to have started this project on PlayStation 4. But we've spoken to them about this game, and they've sort of illustrated the fact that some decisions about the way the world was designed in that original game were limited by the I/O speed and CPU limitations of the PlayStation 4 somewhat. Like the large city in there, I'm forgetting the name at the moment, but it is exactly that issue. Like, they really pushed hard to even make that work at all. And, these guys are amazing with their technology. I'm not doubting what they're going to do. They can deliver a phenomenal looking game. And I have no doubt that the PS5 game will look next gen. It will absolutely blow us away. I'm just concerned about, or more like, not concerned, but you see those large creatures they throw around and the types of things that they were trying to do in the original. I feel like there's a lot more potential there in terms of like the physics and the interactions and the simulation that could happen between those huge creatures, the terrain, and the player. Maybe they never intended to go in that direction. Maybe that was just always off the table. Maybe they are actually pulling it off. I don't know. We don't know enough to say anything yet. That's just where the skepticism comes from. And again, I am hoping that they prove us wrong.
I like to be proven wrong as well too, and I'm also that brings up questions for me of what type of next generation games are we going to be seeing? Ones where they're kind of radically different in the PS5 version beyond the visuals. I also mean maybe there's gameplay aspects that are different there. That would be interesting, because that's what I kind of assumed next gen consoles would be doing with their SSDs and CPUs over time. But we'll just have to wait and see what they do.
That we will. But yeah, overall, pretty good stuff. It's starting to get exciting now that we're getting close to launch. And yeah, Demon Souls, I'm very excited for that. I can't say it enough. But I think that's going to do it for us for this little sort of DF Direct / reaction video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the show with us and didn't find our commentary too crazy. Perhaps, I don't know.
Maybe.
I had fun doing it. So thanks for joining me, Alex.
Oh, it was a pleasure, John.
And if you guys enjoyed this, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, check us out on Patreon, all that good stuff, as we get ready to launch into the next generation of consoles, because it's almost here, and hopefully we can get our hands on them. That's the only question remaining. We shall see. But until next time, this is John and Alex signing off.
Featuring its new Warp wireless technology, Omen's PC peripherals allow for lag-free gaming. From the 360-degree audio of its Omen frequency headphones, the 180-hour battery life of the Vector mouse, and the 2.4 GHz connection of its Spacer keyboard, Omen has you covered for the ultimate wireless experience.